Have you ever asked yourself, oh, why do I still feel this way? That soft ache that just doesn't go away, that longing you keep trying to pray out, fast away, speak away. It lingers. It lingers like a quiet echo of something that once was, or something that almost was. And the more you try to shut it off, the more present it seems to become. And perhaps you've even wondered if God has somehow forgotten to flip the switch, like he's supposed to remove the emotion by now. But what if he's not trying to? What if those feelings are not a flaw in the system, but a feature? You see, we often think that healing is supposed to be immediate, that if something isn't meant for us, it should vanish like a passing cloud. But real growth, the kind that shapes your soul, rarely works on your schedule. Sometimes God allows you to feel deeply, not to torment you, but to teach you. Because what you're feeling may not be about the person anymore. It might be about the mirror they held up to your heart. And if you're brave enough to stop running from those emotions, you may see they're revealing things you've ignored for years. That persistent feeling might be showing you your capacity to love. How immense, how fierce, how faithful it truly is. That kind of love isn't weakness. It's not a mistake. It's proof that you're alive. Maybe you've been told to suppress it, forget it, bury it. But what if it's not there to be buried? What if it's meant to be studied, understood, and honored, not as a command act, but as a call to reflect? Sometimes God leaves those feelings right there, fully aware of the ache they bring, because he knows that in the fire of your longing, something sacred is being forged. Maybe your patience, maybe your ability to sit with uncertainty, maybe your willingness to trust a plan that you can't yet understand. We are so quick to ask for relief, for resolution, but we don't often pause to ask, what is this feeling showing me about myself? It's easy to think that the person you can't stop thinking about is the source of your restlessness. But it may be that what they stirred in you is the real point. Maybe they awakened a desire to be seen, to be chosen, to be held in a way that runs deeper than anything you've allowed before. Maybe it's not about them at all. It's about the part of you that they unlocked. And God's not in a rush to shut that door because that part of you needs air. It needs light. It needs love. And until you've explored it, sat with it, wept over it if you must, you won't be ready to release it. There's also something humbling about not being able to control your own heart. You can try all you want to distract yourself, convince yourself, distract or delete your way into forgetting. But the heart doesn't respond to commands. It responds to truth. And if the truth is that you still care, then don't shame that. Bring it into the light. Ask what it's here for. Let it refine you, not define you. God's silence in this area might be his permission for you to look inward, not outward. To grow through the emotion instead of shutting it down. To lean in just enough, to hear what's beneath it. Maybe it's a lesson in letting go of control. Or learning that even when you love someone deeply, you are still whole on your own. Maybe it's just the universe's way of saying, feel everything. Don't run from this. Learn from it. It's sacred. Because sometimes the feeling doesn't leave. Not because something's wrong, but because something is finally beautifully right. Something inside you is waking up. And the feeling is just the flame. The real question is, will you let it light your way? Let the feeling remain not as your master, but as your mirror. We often assume that healing means forgetting, that moving on is about wiping the slate clean and pretending the story never happened. But healing, real healing, is far more mysterious than that. It doesn't ask you to erase the memory. It invites you to walk through it with open eyes. And sometimes God doesn't take those feelings away because you're not meant to rush past them. You're meant to walk with them until they've told you everything they came to teach. We want the exit door. We pray for it. We look for signs. We scroll through 1,000 distractions hoping that one of them will finally flip the switch. But maybe that door we're looking for doesn't lead out, it leads inward. Maybe God is asking you not to move on like it's a race, but to move through like it's a sacred dance. Because growth doesn't come from avoidance, it comes from presence. Presence with your pain, presence with your confusion, presence with the aching truth that you still care, even when you think you shouldn't. You see, the world tells us to be strong by being cold, numb, unbothered, but divine strength is different. It's not the absence of emotion. It's the willingness to feel and still keep walking. When God doesn't remove your feelings, it's not because he wants you to stay stuck. It's because he wants you to see that this place you call a stuck is actually sacred ground. A space where something deep within you is being rewired, reshaped, You're learning how to hold longing without letting it hold you. You're learning how to be tender without breaking. And maybe you're even learning how to love without needing to possess. Because that's the lesson most of us avoid. We think love has to lead somewhere, to a label, to a relationship, to a resolution. But sometimes love is the teacher, not the destination. That feeling in your chest, that's not your weakness. That's the part of you still willing to care, even after all the hurt. And God lets that stay, not to torment you, but to grow you. Not to punish you, but to transform you. There's something strange about the human heart. It doesn't heal on demand. It doesn't forget when told. And it rarely follows logic. But that's not a flaw. It's a feature. Because the heart doesn't just carry love, it carries lessons. And if you try to silence it before it's finished speaking, you'll miss the gold buried beneath the grief. You may not be with the person anymore. You may never be. But that doesn't mean the story was meaningless. Huh? It might mean that it was meaningful because it ended. Because it revealed something to you that ease never could. And that feeling you still carry, it might be proof that you were open, that you were willing, that you had the courage to let someone in, even if they didn't stay. So no, God's not ignoring your cries for relief. He's just leading you down a quieter path. One that doesn't come with flashing signs or immediate answers. One that asks you to trust the process. Not because it's easy, but because it's real. The pain that lingers is sometimes the very thing that leads you back to yourself, back to the part of you that you lost trying to be loved, back to the innocence you once thought was gone for good. So when those feelings come up again, and they will, don't treat them like intruders. Sit with them. Listen, let them speak, because maybe you're not being held back at all. Maybe you're being held still, just long enough to become someone new. There's no need to rush the heart when it's doing sacred work. Sometimes a person enters your life not to stay, but to stir. Not to complete you, but to awaken something in you that had long been asleep. And when that kind of connection touches your soul, it doesn't just disappear. It doesn't politely fade out like background noise. It lingers. And not because you're weak or confused or spiritually behind, but because something within you was cracked open, and God is still doing work through the opening. You might find yourself wondering, why can't I just forget them? Why can't I feel normal again? But maybe you had become so used to operating from a place of emotional safety, distance, or numbness that when this person came into your world, they struck a chord so true, it woke you up. And not just to them, but to you. Because that's what certain people do. They awaken the hidden chambers of our hearts. They draw out parts of us we didn't know were waiting. Maybe they reminded you that you could feel excitement again, or that you still believe in the kind of love that makes your chest rise without effort. Maybe they reflected back to you your depth, your tenderness, your wild hope, and it scared you just as much as it thrilled you. That kind of awakening doesn't come without a cost. You don't get to go back to who you were before it. And that's the point. God might not be removing those feelings because they're not a mistake to be undone. They're a signal of transformation. You're being invited to explore the deeper waters of your own soul. And the person, they may have just been the ripple that broke the surface. Oh, it doesn't mean you're meant to be with them. It doesn't even mean they were meant to stay. But their role in your story might have been to illuminate something you hadn't dared to see. Sometimes it takes a divine disruption to show you what's been buried under routine and logic. That ache you feel, it's not about losing someone. It's about encountering a part of yourself that was hiding under layers of protection. You see, love is rarely clean. It's not always symmetrical or convenient. It doesn't always follow a happy ending, but it's always an opportunity. And what God allows you to feel, He often uses to shape you. That person may have stirred a longing that feels unbearable at times. But what if that longing is less about them and more about the life you truly want? The connection you crave, the freedom to feel deeply, the permission to hope again. And even if that person never reappears in your life, the part of you that woke up because of them, that's yours to keep. That's sacred territory. And God may be leaving those feelings intact so you don't forget what's possible, so you don't settle, so you don't fall back asleep. Maybe this isn't about finding your way back to someone else. Maybe it's about finding your way back to the parts of you they helped you see. The parts that believe, that risk, that long for something real. You're not broken because you still feel. You're becoming more whole, more present, more aware of what matters. And when it hurts, because it will, don't curse the feeling. Thank it, because it means something happened that mattered. And sometimes God leaves the echo just long enough for it to lead you home. You were never meant to forget. You were meant to awaken. We like things fast. Healing, closure, answers. We want them now. And not just now, but cleanly, neatly, without all the confusion and contradiction. We want to feel better instantly. And if we don't, we start wondering what's wrong with us. But healing was never meant to be a light switch. It was always meant to be a process. One step at a time. One breath, one tear, one unexpected moment of clarity, followed by silence. And maybe that's why God hasn't taken those feelings away. Because he's not interested in performing emotional surgery. He's interested in transformation. And transformation doesn't rush. We think something is broken if we're still crying weeks, months, even years later. We think we failed if the memory still stings, or if the sound of their name still echoes somewhere deep inside our chest. But pain has a rhythm. And God doesn't operate on your calendar. He allows you to feel what you feel for as long as it needs to live, not to punish you, but to form you. You see, there's a kind of wisdom that only time can teach. And you don't get it by skipping ahead. You get it by sitting right in the thick of your discomfort in the stillness between what was and what could be. That space in between, that's where the magic happens. That's where your old identity begins to dissolve and your new one begins to emerge. Not because you planned it, not because you forced it, but because you allowed yourself to stay when every part of you wanted to run. We treat emotions like problems to be solved, but maybe they're companions. Maybe that lingering sadness is walking with you, not against you. Maybe those intense waves of memory and longing are just reminders that you're still human, still alive, still capable of loving deeply. And isn't that something to honor? The truth is, you don't fully understand your own heart until it's been shattered a little, until it's been stretched by longing and softened by surrender. Quick healing might feel good, but it often leaves things unresolved beneath the surface. And God's not in the business of shallow fixes. He's after the kind of healing that lasts, the kind that makes you new. Sometimes we ask God to remove our feelings, but what we're really asking is to be spared from the discomfort of feeling them. And that's fair. No one wants to ache. But if you silence every ache too soon, you never learn what it came to teach. And some of the most profound revelations come not at the height of joy, but in the quiet depths of heartache. The healing God offers is a slow, sacred unfolding. It's the type of journey where one day, without even realizing it, you'll notice that the weight doesn't sit quite so heavy. The memory doesn't cut quite as sharp. And the feeling, still there maybe, but quieter now, no longer screaming for attention, just existing, like an old song playing faintly in the distance. And by then you'll have changed. Not because the pain vanished, but because you allowed it to shape you. So don't rush this. Don't try to flip the page before you've read the lesson. If you still feel something, let yourself feel it. Not forever, but fully. Trust that God knows exactly how long this part of the journey needs to last. And know that just because you're not healed yet doesn't mean you're not healing. There's beauty in the slow burn, in the gradual rise of light after a long night. And maybe that's the point. Not to wake up one day and be over it, but to realize that somewhere along the way, you became someone who no longer needs to be. Real healing doesn't erase the feeling. It teaches you how to carry it with grace. It's strange, isn't it? How something can feel so still on the surface, yet underneath, something is shifting. You might be praying, hoping, waiting, asking for the weight in your heart to finally lift. And yet, nothing seems to change. You get up, you go through the day, you whisper the same questions into your pillow at night. Why do I still feel this way? Why isn't this gone by now? It can feel like silence, like absence. Like maybe God has forgotten to finish the work he started. But what if that stillness isn't absence at all? What if it's sacred? What if beneath the quiet something is still being written, something is still being shaped? Not out there, but within you. You see, we expect healing and clarity to arrive like lightning. Loud, dramatic, obvious. But more often they move like the tide, subtle, rhythmic, invisible from a distance. Sometimes what God is doing doesn't look like anything at all. There's no sign, no message, no miraculous moment, but that doesn't mean nothing's happening. Sometimes the most important shifts are the ones that occur in silence when no one's watching, when your heart is still cracked open and raw. You're looking for the story to make sense, for the loose ends to tie themselves into a neat little bow. But the human heart doesn't work like that. And divine timing doesn't operate on our logic. That person you still think about, that ache that won't let go, it might not be because you're behind. It might be because something is still unfolding in you or in them or between you both in ways neither of you can see. There are spiritual threads connecting us, weaving through time and memory and soul. Just because someone isn't in your life the way they used to be doesn't mean the connection is gone. And maybe that's why you still feel it. Because something is still in motion. Not always forward. Sometimes deeper. Sometimes sideways. Sometimes in a direction only eternity understands. We tend to measure movement by what we can see. But what if the deepest kind of movement is invisible? What if the healing you're asking for isn't about forgetting, but about being reformed from within? Maybe the person you became when you loved them isn't meant to disappear. Maybe they awaken something that's still becoming. Something isn't finished yet. You want the pain to be gone. That makes sense. But if it stayed, maybe it stayed for a reason. Maybe your soul isn't done listening to what this chapter came to say. Oh, and God isn't trying to rush you out of it because some parts of your story don't resolve quickly. Some stories don't end when the person leaves. Some continue in quiet ways. Ways that shape you into someone wiser, softer, more whole. That's what the silence might be. Not God's refusal to move, but his insistence that things are better grown in the dark. Some healing is like a seed, buried, out of sight, but still alive, still reaching towards something unseen. So even when it seems like nothing is happening, when the feeling hasn't left, and your prayers feel unanswered, remember God does some of his greatest work behind the curtain, in the waiting, in the silence, in the places you think have been forgotten. Trust the process even if you can't track it. And if the feeling still lingers, maybe it's not there to trap you, but to teach you how to live with mystery, with love, with longing, and still move through the world with open hands. Sometimes what feels unfinished is simply unfolding. There's something we all try to do, almost without realizing it. We try to control our feelings. We want to manage them, master them, contain them. And when we can't, when they spill over the edges and show up uninvited, we feel embarrassed, maybe even ashamed. Especially when it comes to love. We think we're supposed to be stronger than our emotions. We think that faith means we should be able to let go on command, as if healing is a button you press and detachment a sign of spiritual maturity. But love, real love, doesn't obey control. It doesn't show up when it's convenient or leave when it no longer makes sense. It doesn't ask for permission to stay in your heart. And sometimes God doesn't remove the feeling because he never asked you to remove it. He asked you to surrender it. And surrender isn't about suppression. It's about offering. You see, when you love someone deeply, it's not just about chemistry or timing or shared experiences. It's about connection. And that kind of connection carves its way into you. It doesn't just brush the surface. It sinks down into the core. So, of course, it's not easy to unfeel. Of course, the feeling stays longer than you expected. Because love, in its truest form, was never something you were supposed to possess. It was something you were meant to honor, and yet we keep trying to force it into neat compartments. We pray for closure. We plead for numbness. We convince ourselves that if the feeling lingers, then surely something is wrong. But maybe the feeling isn't the problem. Maybe it's the way we relate to it that causes so much turmoil. We try to control it by denying it, ignoring it, bargaining with it. And every time we do, it pushes back. Because love wasn't designed to be silenced. It was designed to be lived. God may be allowing those feelings to remain, not to torment you, but to teach you how to hold love without owning it. How to carry tenderness without needing to act on it. How to care deeply without clinging desperately. That's the kind of maturity the soul longs for. That's the kind of freedom that comes from surrender, not from forgetting. When we stop trying to control how we feel, we open ourselves to a greater truth. Feelings are not meant to dictate your choices, but they do have something to reveal. They show you where your heart is alive, where your soul is reaching, where your spirit is soft enough to be touched. And that softness, it's not weakness, it's power. The kind of power that doesn't demand or grasp, but accepts. The kind that understands that not every love must lead to possession, and not every feeling must be resolved to be sacred. Huh? Maybe you're still feeling what you feel because God is teaching you that love isn't about getting what you want. It's about becoming who you're meant to be. And sometimes the people we love shape us most without staying. Sometimes their role was never to complete the story, but to open the chapter that changes everything. So let the feeling be there. Not because you're stuck, not because you failed, but because you're learning to live with an open heart. You're learning that surrender doesn't mean forgetting. It means trusting that love can live in you without ruling you. And that perhaps is one of the most sacred things we ever come to understand. Not how to stop feeling, but how to feel fully and still be free. When you stop needing love to follow your rules, you finally become big enough to hold it.